Blog Talk Radio. Hello and welcome to Subversive Radio. I'm your host, Keith Giles. Thank you for listening. If you are listening live, and if you're not, I don't blame you because I only decided about 10 minutes ago that I was even going to do this podcast, so I didn't give anybody any advance notice, and for that I apologize. But, hey, if it just happens that on a Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you happen to be available or listening, or perhaps you noticed that I said something about the fact that I was going to be doing this broadcast at the last minute, you're welcome to call in at 646-652-4945. That's 646-652-4945. I have been doing quite a bit of the podcasting this week. And again, I want to say thank you to my dear friend and brother in Christ, Leighton Lynch, who donated $40 so that I could afford to go back to Blog Talk Radio and do some interviews, accept callers, and things like that. I had originally started out on Blog Talk, and then I moved over to Spreaker because it was free. But, yeah, and if you would like to sponsor my upcoming podcasts, you may do so. Just you can email me and find out how to do that. It only takes $40 a month, so even if you donated 10 or 20 or something like that, that would go towards continuing the Blog Talk Radio podcast, because that then allows me to not only take your calls, but also to do interviews. And so what I've been doing, I've interviewed Herb Montgomery, I interviewed John Zenz, I interviewed Steve Gregg, and that was just this week. Coming up on Tuesday of next week, I'm going to be interviewing my dear friend, Dr. Thomas Crisp. We're going to be talking about Jesus and nonviolence and Gandhi. And upcoming, I think the week after that, I'll be interviewing Al Baker, who is a Constantinian scholar, I guess you'd say. He and I have had several debates back and forth through email about Constantine. And I thought, you know what, why don't we just have a conversation on the blog or on the podcast? And let people call in, and or at least nothing else, listen to our conversations about Constantine. So it's a bit of a debate, but sort of a debate, sort of a conversation. We're a little bit on different sides of Constantine's conversion was legitimate, whether or not Constantine was good or bad influence on the church, and to what degree he was good or bad influence on the church, and things like that. So that'll be interesting. And also coming up probably in September, I have Dr. Scott Barchi, one of my heroes, by the way. Very honored that I'll get a chance to talk to him. He is actually professor of philosophy at UCLA, and he will be joining me to talk about the early Christian church. He's also in progress writing a book about, I think it's called Call No Man Father, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. I have also invited my friend Dan Noddy to come and talk about authentic community, and hopefully we'll get that nailed down, and I'll have a date for you coming up as well. So we have a lot scheduled, and again, I want to thank you, Leighton, because your donation has made all that possible. So that's been awesome, and I really appreciate that. It's actually been good and bad. I think I do want to apologize for the audio quality, because Subversive Radio, Blog Talk Radio, sorry, I'm getting ready to tweet something here. Blog Talk Radio, there's good and bad, right? So Spreaker's free and the audio quality much better. But you can't take callers. Blog Talk Radio, it costs $40 a month, and you can take callers, but the audio quality is notoriously bad. So that's the downside. Anyway, if you would like to call in and join me at 646-652-4945. Yeah, I guess that's the only kind of announcements that I had. Again, I just had an open window here. I've got about 45 minutes to kill, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I go ahead and do a podcast? So here's what I wanted to talk about. The title of our podcast is Ultimate Ninja Jesus. Ultimate Ninja Jesus. What is that about? Well, this is just the way my brain works. Earlier this week, I was in a conversation over email with a friend of mine, and we were actually discussing back and forth on the email about about tithing. And he just said something about tithing and how important it is for Christians to tithe. And I said, well, I think it's important for Christians to give. I think giving is a New Testament concept, but tithing is not a New Testament concept. Tithing is not taught in the New Testament. Tithing wasn't taught by the New Testament church. Tithing wasn't practiced by the New Testament church. Actually, what we see historically is a free will offering. What we see is the understanding that unlike the Old Covenant tithe, which was 10%, the idea that 10% of your income belonged to God, if you will, the New Testament concept, based on Jesus' statement in Luke, that if anyone would come after me, he must give up everything and follow me. And so, whereas the Old Covenant idea was 10% belonged to God, Jesus' statement was everything belongs to God. 100% belongs to God. So when Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's, that changed the paradigm. And so the New Testament church did not practice tithing. In fact, I think the best example I have of that is if you go to my blog, actually, it's the post is called Tertullian's Window. And that's on my blog, which is found at keithgiles.com. That's just my name, KeithGiles.com. And what this is, it's very basically it's a quote from Tertullian's Apology, okay? And he was a 2nd century church father. And here's what he said in the 2nd century. This is the way he described the offering that was practiced by the early church. He says, even if there is a treasury of a sort, it is not made up of money paid in initiation fees, as if religion were a matter of contract. Every man once a month brings some modest contribution or whatever he wishes, and only if he does wish, and if he can. For no one is compelled. It is a voluntary offering to feed the poor and to bury them, for boys and girls who lack property and parents, and then for slaves grown old. And so that is a very radical idea of giving. What we see in the shift that happened between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant was that under the Old Covenant, that tithe was a command. You must. You have to give 10%. So it was a command. There was a there was a penalty if you didn't do it. There was shame on you if you weren't able to do it. You had to give 10%. Under the New Covenant, it's you get to give 100%. So instead of you've got to, it's you get to, which is why we see in Acts chapter 2, people that didn't even know each other's names a few hours before or days before are suddenly calling each other family, brother, sister, and saying, oh, you need food? You don't have enough to eat or to wear? I've got some property. I'm going to sell it and take that money and buy food for you. So we see a radical sharing. In fact, not only that, what we see is not only this radical giving and sharing, a love that's willing to just liquidate assets for the needs of others. What we also see is this idea that everything belongs to God. And it's such a radical statement of love. In fact, my friend Dan Noddy, which I mentioned a second ago, he and I were talking about this whole idea of tithing versus giving, and he made an interesting observation. He says, the only example of tithing in the New Testament would be Ananias and Sapphira, because in other words, what they did was they took everything. They took 100% because they sold their property, and they took 100%, but they only gave a little bit and claimed that it was everything. And so when they only gave a little bit and said that, well, this is all of it, they were struck dead. So I thought that was an interesting observation. But what we see instead is the idea that, hey, if you've got something and someone has a need, whatever it takes, you're radically sharing that with others. So anyway, not to get too into the weeds on tithing, because anyway, that conversation about tithing is what led to the ultimate ninja Jesus. So I'm getting there. So anyway, we talked about that. I made this point to him that tithing was not a New Testament concept. And by the way, that the Christian church only officially endorsed tithing in 777 AD, 700 years after Christ. And that was under Charlemagne. And so the church existed, a very, very long time without this idea of tithing. Instead what they practiced was a radical giving. Anyway, so I made that point with him. And then he saw it, which was cool. He said, okay, he looked up some things and he did some research on his own, and he came back to me and said, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying, and that's right, I agree with you. And then what he said was, but I also know that Jesus said he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So as if to suggest that, well, yeah, even I hear what you're saying, that the tithing is an Old Testament, Old Covenant concept. But don't forget, Jesus said he didn't come to abolish the law, he came to fulfill it. And this is what leads me to ultimate ninja Jesus. What happens is whenever you suggest, or I should say whenever I suggest, that Christians are not under the Old Covenant, people will quote the words of Jesus from Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17, where Jesus says this, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Verse 18, "I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." Now, we've talked about this before. When Christians quote to you or say, Jesus said he did not come to abolish the law but to fulfill it, but they say it in a way as to suggest that Christians are still now under the Old Covenant mandates and laws. That is incorrect to say you are under the law and that the Old Covenant laws still apply to you as a Christian. That is not what he means. Notice in that statement, he says that the law will not pass away until it is accomplished. And he says that he came to accomplish it. So Jesus says, I came here to fulfill that law, and it will not pass away until I do. Okay? So this is what got me thinking. I was trying to think of an analogy. How would I explain that idea? What is Jesus saying there in Matthew about, what is he wanting to communicate to us when he talks about this? When he says, I'm not coming to abolish that law, but I'm coming to fulfill it. Okay, here's what I think. Have you ever seen this TV show called American Ninja Warrior? If you haven't, don't worry. Probably been flipping through channels like I was, and you happen to see, it's like something kind of like, what was that show? I can't think of the name of it now. It's sort of like a cheesy game show kind of a thing where people compete in a obstacle course. Okay, so it's interesting in the one hand because it's basically this obstacle course that's really, 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 really hard, and men and women both compete in it. And sometimes people, they're all just regular people. Most of them. Some of them are Olympic athletes. Some of them are, they're Navy SEALs and, people that are like mountain climbers and all kinds of gymnasts and, et cetera. But it's a very physically demanding obstacle course, and only a very handful of people, only very few people are able to complete this ultimate American Ninja obstacle course. Frankly, most people fail on the first or second one. They might make it halfway through, but very few of them make it to the very, very end and complete the course. And then, of course, the goal is that that's sort of the round one, and then they'll have the people who do accomplish the first one, and they'll make it a little bit harder and longer and more challenging, and then those people will compete again. And of course, the goal is to decide, to arrive at one final ultimate American Ninja. I don't know why they call them ninjas. Ninjas have nothing to do with this, but anyway, that's what they call the show. So just imagine, if you will, that the law, okay, 10 Commandments, the law of God. Let's imagine that the law of God is the most incredibly, impossibly difficult obstacle course, okay? And there are 10 obstacles, all right? And they are so hard, they are so difficult that for thousands of years, from the very beginning when God gave the law, it was impossible for anyone to complete that obstacle course. Nobody could do it. Nobody. I mean, it wasn't like people got to, we made it to the 7th and the 8th and the 9th, and they almost made it to the 10th, but they failed. No. People couldn't even get past the first one, okay? That first obstacle course was that first, challenge was so difficult. Maybe someone, if they were really, really, really good, they might make it to the second one, but listen, no one has ever been able to complete this obstacle course. And by the way, that's what the Scriptures tell us. The Scriptures tell us that the law of God, that the 10 Commandments, it was put there to show us that we can't do it, to show us our sin, to show us our inability, that we can't do it. Now, go back to our obstacle course idea, our obstacle course metaphor. When God gave this obstacle course to mankind, and again, keep in mind, God is the one who gave us this obstacle course. He said, here are 10 obstacles. They are so incredibly, impossibly hard to complete. I'm going to hold you to this impossible standard. If, by the way, if you can keep these commandments, if you can perfectly complete this obstacle course of 10 unbelievably difficult and challenging obstacles, if you can make it to the end, all the way and you can complete the final obstacle, and you get all the way through the course and you hit that shiny red button, yay, you did it. God says, there's a promise at the end of it. I'm going to give you this promise. I'm going to give you this incredibly awesome, amazing promise if you can complete it. Now, imagine for thousands of years, no one has ever been able to complete it. They constantly, completely, just horrifically fail over and over and over again. They have to offer sacrifices, blood sacrifices in the temple on a regular basis because they just keep failing. And that obstacle course stands forever as a reminder to them of their failure, that they can't keep that law. They can't complete that obstacle course. Okay? Are you with me? Good. Then Jesus shows up. And Jesus says, he points to that obstacle course and he says this, I'm not here to tear down that obstacle course. Now, I know it's impossible. I know it's a yoke that has been put on you, that you cannot stand up under it. You cannot bear it. It is a heavy, heavy yoke that you can't carry. And the teachers of the law, they just keep telling you and pounding you and drilling you to finish this course, and you are so weary and so tired, and none of you has ever been able to do it. And by the way, none of them have been able to do it either. And Jesus says this, I'm not here to get rid of that obstacle course. In fact, I'm here to finish it. I'm here to complete it. Watch me. I am going to do what no one has ever been able to do. I am going to compete in the ultimate ninja course. And we watch Jesus live a sinless life. We watch Jesus live a kingdom life. We watch Jesus humbling himself, submitting himself to the Father daily, being filled with the Holy Spirit, only doing what he sees the Father doing, living a perfect, sinless life. And we see Jesus completing one after the other. He finishes the first one. He finishes the second one. He finishes the third one. Oh my gosh, no one's ever done this. He does the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, the seventh one, the eighth one, the ninth, the 10th. Oh my gosh, no one has ever made it this far. No one has ever completed this obstacle course. No one has been able to do this. When Jesus says, again in Matthew 5, I'm not here to abolish it, I'm here to fulfill it. Do you know that when Jesus on the cross says it is finished, what he's actually saying, the Greek phrase there is, it is accomplished. So he began his ministry by saying, I'm not here to tear down that obstacle course, I'm here to complete it. And on the cross, at the end of his ministry, he says, I have accomplished it. It is accomplished. I did it. Jesus is able to do what no one was able to do. No human being was ever able to accomplish. He completes this obstacle course, and when he gets to the very, very final one, he hits that red button, and he gets the promise. He gets the promise that no one has ever been able to win. He gets the prize that no human being was ever able to secure. Now, Jesus turns around and says to us, I did it. I did it. I finished it. I completed it. Now listen, you can, if you want, you can keep on trying to run that obstacle course. I'm telling you, for thousands of years, no one's been able to do it. But I've already done it. And not only that, I've already got the prize. I've already got that promise. It's right here. And you know what? You can have it without running that course. Just come to me. Jesus says, look, just come to me. Come to me, and I'll give you this promise that I've won, that I've won it. I've secured it. I've done what you couldn't do, what no one could do. Nobody could finish that course, but I did. And now that I've got this prize, I freely share it with anyone who would come to me, for anyone who would have it. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Jesus is saying in that verse, he's saying, look, you can run that race we can run that. Look, the obstacle course is still up. I mean, there it is. It's still there. If any man thinks he's tough enough, he's awesome enough, he thinks he can run that obstacle course, and he can gain that prize for himself by his own effort, by his own will, by his own works. Go ahead if you want to, but that's really, really stupid because you can't. No one can. And I've already done it. Jesus says, I've already done it. I've already won the prize. And I've got this incredible gift, this incredible promise, this incredible, unbelievable wealth of the kingdom of God. And I'm passing it out for free to anyone who would just come to me. Jesus says, come to me and have life. And have life in abundance. And if you abide in me, you remain in me, you live in me, you don't even know where you end and I begin, and you are just so connected to me, you'll continue to have life. And you'll continue to have that blessing of my presence, to know peace that passes understanding, to stop trying to accomplish something that you could never accomplish on your own. That's what Jesus means. And anyway, it just came to me as I was thinking about this, again, the other day. It flowed out of that conversation I had with my friend. And understand that when Jesus says he didn't come to abolish the law but to fulfill it, he did fulfill it. He did it. It's fulfilled, okay? It has been fulfilled. And Jesus said that there were two qualifiers, right? Let's go back to that verse in Matthew, okay? He says, I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Now, when everything is accomplished, what will happen? What does he say? The law will disappear. So in other words, when Jesus has accomplished the law, then it will disappear. That's what we see all through the New Testament. That's why Hebrews tells us that the old covenant is fading away and it is obsolete. That's why Paul talks about in Galatians about these two covenants. One of them's fading, one of them is from below, and the other one is from above and is eternal. That's the new covenant, which is lasting and enduring forever. And he says that those of the old covenant cannot partake in the promise of those of the new covenant. So you can have your choice. If you decide to stick with this old covenant idea, you want to still submit yourself to this old law and this old obstacle course, which no one can complete, then that you've made a decision not to partake in the enduring promises of the new covenant, which Jesus has already won and freely offers to anyone who would follow him. Anyway, I just thought that was cool. It was just something that kind of came to me as I was thinking about this and driving home and talking to God about this, and I was trying to think of how do I explain to my friend what Jesus means in that verse, and that he doesn't mean, I'm here to affirm that the old covenant will always be in effect, and Christians will always have to be underneath this yoke, this heavy yoke of the old covenant. How can I communicate it? And this analogy just came to me. It's like that stupid American Ninja thing. Yeah, except Jesus did something that no one has ever been able to do, and he won the prize at the end. And now that he's won the prize at the end, he says, "Come to me, and I will freely share with you all the promises that were added to those who could complete the obstacle course." No one was ever able to do it, but because he did it, now he's got the prize, he's got the blessing, he's got the benefit, and he freely shares it with everyone. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that's a blessing to you. Man, it blesses me, if nobody else. I hope you'll join me on Tuesday night when my guest will be Dr. Thomas Crisp, and we will talk about Jesus, Gandhi, and nonviolence. You're welcome to call in and partake in that conversation if you would like, or just listen in. And I would ask you as well to share these podcasts if they're a blessing to you. Think of someone who might be blessed by them and, forward the link to them. Share it with them or share it on your Twitter or Facebook account. I would really appreciate that. I've been amazed how many people have been listening and who've been blessed. I've talked to people in India and Sweden and Norway and Australia, and it's really awesome. It's been really incredible, and just praise God for it. I'm so thankful that through the magic and mystery and blessing of the internet and technology, we're able to be a blessing to a lot of people. So I thank you for listening. Thank you, those of you who have been supporting and praying for this ministry and for me and my family. I appreciate that. And we will talk again. God bless, and let the kingdom come. Good night.